Good morning, everybody. My name is Meish. I'm originally a virtualization guy. I am a blogger for actually a number of people congratulated me on my 7th year as a blogger with the link over there. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm also a writer, which I've participated in 2 writing projects. One of them was a VMware architecture design book, and the second one was, as of late, a OpenStack architecture design with a sprint which we did of 5 days writing a book in San Jose for the OpenStack Foundation. Also have a number of certifications and titles that people have given me. Firstly, before I start, and I'm not going to get anybody to stand up because Joseph already did that for us, so if you are a developer, can you raise your hand, please? Okay. If you are an operations, sysadmin, infrastructure guy, can you raise your hand, please? If you consider yourself as both equally, can you raise your hand, please? Okay, it's very interesting. So it's about 50-50, and I would say out of those, 20-30% of the people are actually both then. Which one is Venus, which one is Mars? Anybody can recognize? Shout out if you want. Mars and Venus. Well, to tell you the truth, I didn't know until I did this presentation, and I didn't really care. Because once I did science projects a long, long time ago at school, and since then I've not really touched it. But because of the presentation, I had to actually look up and see which one is exactly Venus and which one is Mars. And of course, the title of this presentation came from this book, which I'm sure if you are married or in a relationship or going to be in a relationship, you should have or already have read it. And the quote at the bottom of the book is more or less what I would like to say about not only men and women are different, but also developers and ops guys. But I don't like using the word ops or ops girls or guys, because we're not ops. We're either sysadmins or infrastructure administrators, so the ops doesn't really work, but just for the sake of this actual presentation and the argument, we'll use them as ops. So we are all unique individuals with unique experiences. We all have our own backgrounds, the things which interest us, the things which we know how to do well, and things which we don't know how to do well. So why did this talk come about? Everybody's talking about DevOps. I keep on hearing that by at least 3 times a day in where I work, usually from people which have absolutely no idea what DevOps is. And we have to do DevOps, we have to do Agile, we have to do Scrums, we have to do Agile and DevOps and so on and so forth. And by stuffing people from 2 different cultures and 2 different ways of thinking in a room to work together will not help you do something called DevOps. It won't whatsoever. There are 2 different kinds of people. They have to understand each other. And hopefully this talk will give the people, the 50% of the room which were developers and the 50% of the room which were operations guys and not the people which were in between, slight insight to what the other species is. A developer, as you can see, likes to get things done. And not necessarily is it a way it works. Anybody can tell me that they didn't get the bicycle. Of course it works. So, and I apologize because it's going to be extremely full of stereotypes, and on purpose it's going to be like that. So whoever, please do not get offended, either the operations people or the developers. But this is the way it is. I see it at least. What do developers care about? They write code. They write software because a whole bunch of code comes out to be a nice program eventually, and something which, that program is a work of art, of course, which a developer wrote because it's written in a specific way. It does this, it does that, it does that. And they always get thing 1 to work with thing 2. But the question is, what do operations people care about? They like to get things working and keep things working the whole time. And it's not an easy job because there are people which are operations people, sysadmins, which have to keep infrastructure running, not only from you which are writing code, but from every other application and the Exchange server and their Active Directory and their web portal and everything else, and it's a very tricky job because there's a huge amount of moving parts. As John said, not only the compute, there's also network, and there is storage, and there's security, and there is a number of other things as well. You can add on as many as you want, and it's not an easy thing to keep things running. No, it's not me. So operations people care about the most important thing that I usually did when I was an operations guy, and I'm originally an operations guy, still consider myself an ops guy, not a developer whatsoever. I do write to dabble in code every now and again, but not much, but I do not like getting alerts on my phone at 2:56 a.m. when I'm sleeping because something went wrong with the infrastructure. Not only does it wake me up, it wakes up everybody else in the house as well, which is extremely, extremely annoying. We like things which are stable. In other words, they've been tried, they've been tested, they've been used not only by a single developer who has thought, oh, I want to try this new technology because it sounds nice and cool, and there has to be some kind of a standard. In other words, the same thing. I don't want everybody to come and find, oh, there's a new database being used by Google, or somebody else over there in Facebook has developed a new database. Let's try it out and run our code in production on that kind of thing, because that's what it's done. They like things to be green. They like dashboards. Well, actually, admins don't really like dashboards. Managers and management levels like green dashboards. Sysadmins, as a personal, I never ever looked at the dashboard because I didn't really care. Because if I knew that if something was wrong, I would get an alert and something would be wrong. So I don't need a dashboard to tell me something was wrong, yes or no. What tools do developers use? They have IDEs. If you ask a sysadmin what is an IDE, you say, okay, that's an interface for a hard drive. I have SATA, I've got SCSI, I've got SSDs. That's my IDE. If you ask a simulator, yeah, I used to play Flight Simulator when I was a kid, not anymore. Jenkins, that's the butler guy, correct? An SCM, what is an SCM? Oh, source control. They have kind of things like branches. I used to play on a branch when I was a kid. DB tools, I can install the database for you, but I don't know how to use all these kind of tools. And if you want me to really be a maven, I'll understand what you want. But that's what tools that developers kind of, these are a number of things, but I'm sure there are a lot more. And it works. We're not really sure how, but it works. Sometimes, true or not, yes or no, don't know. Operations people, what do they care about? They care about the scripts. As John said, it was 5 different tools or 4 different commands which did a certain thing and they made something work. I wrote a while back a script which took originally 16 or 18 man-hours to install an Oracle RAC cluster on VMware. And I wrote a script which took me 2 months to write the script. But anyway, it was something like 600 lines of code, but it was a script, not a piece of software. And we cut that time down from 16 hours to something like 60 minutes. And all of that was 55 minutes was waiting for software to install. 5 minutes of interaction, 55 minutes to install. So yes, sysadmins know how to solve problems. They write scripts. They don't write software. They usually also don't write code. Some of them do in certain kinds of things, but I wouldn't call them developers. We care about the infrastructure. If it be OpenStack or VMware, we like to have stuff where we can, or somewhere to put our workloads. We care about server, we care about servers, we care about storage, we care about networks, all the things which we need to actually run that infrastructure. Because no matter how much a developer can think I access my infrastructure through an API, under that API is a physical server and a physical port and a physical disk. Those things are important to a system administrator. Those are the tools that he needs. And a small anecdote about the small little paperclip. This was actually one of my tools, which I used as a server admin for 2 things. I had it on my badge, in my tag, when I went into the server room for 2 things. Number 1, if you ever have noticed, there is a small little hole on a CD drive that if a CD gets stuck inside, you can push with a pin inside. That can take out your CD. That was number 1. And the second thing, I know you all have a nice laptop or a PC at home and you have a very nice big power button you can push on and off. There's no such a thing like that on a server. If you've ever been on a server, it's a small little thing which is embezzled inside that you have to have some small little tool to push in and power on and power off a server or reset a server. So I used to have a paperclip on my badge. That's one of my tools. Sysadmins love their hardware and they idolize their hardware and they think it's the best thing since sliced bread. So yes, we do love our hardware. We do revere our hardware as a part of the infrastructure and something which we find important. Terminology that sometimes developers use. We work about sprints and not the 100-meter or the 400-meter dash. We're talking about Scrum and not the rugby part of Scrum. We're talking about releases, continuous integration and delivery, Kanban, libraries, and libraries, of course, of software, not places where you go to get a book or a video or a DVD today. That doesn't actually happen anymore, but anyway, we all download everything. But if you would go and ask a sysadmin, what is Kanban? You'd probably see something like this. They have no idea what these agile methodologies are. You need to explain them to them, explain to sysadmins what these things are. Operations people have different kinds of terminologies that they use, different terms that they use. They speak about requirements. And we're not talking about software requirements that thing A has to speak to thing 2 over SSL in a certain amount of time. We're talking about you have a piece of software and it needs to run on my infrastructure. What does it need? How much disk does it need? How much CPU? How much RAM? How much network throughput? How much I/O throughput? How much I/O space? What are your availability levels you need to have? What happens if I bring the infrastructure down? That is the requirements an system admin or infrastructure admin will use. Change management. How many developers have ever gone through a change management process? Not everybody at once. Okay. Nobody. Change management, of course, is something which is part of an IT ongoing system. Hopefully, I would hope that most big organizations got it. And they say that if we have something which is going to change, or perhaps depends on how big effect it could possibly have on somebody else in the organization, it has to go through a process where the people from the storage listen to the change that's going to happen in the network, the security, the support people, everything goes and they listen to what the change is going to be, what was done, what was the whole plan, and to see if it's going to screw anything up. Because sometimes a change that you want to do, for example, make a change to some kind of a tag in a library, as John said over here before, it can work and you think it works, but sometimes you miss something and it's going to make a huge impact on everything else that you have. Availability means, for a sysadmin, how do I access your application, or how do you access your application if a rack goes down, a server goes down, a data center goes down? What happens then? What do you need? When do you need it back up? What will happen if I need to restore? From how long ago do I need to restore it from? And of course, support and help desk means who is going to answer a call if there's a problem with this application. Do you do it? Do the application developers do it? Do the administrators do it? So on and so forth. That is not redundancy to a sysadmin. Definitely not. It works, but again, question is, it works, but how long will it stay stable for? How long can you continue using your application or your infrastructure in that way? Definition of done. DoD, not Department of Defense, definition of done. What is definition of done for a developer? Whatever is in his sprint. I have a certain amount of things which I need to complete by the end of my sprint, and that's what it is. And of course, it worked when I did it on my laptop or in my DevStack environment or in my Vagrant environment, and everything works. And when it doesn't work by you, it's your problem. It's something's wrong with yours. So developers have their own idea of what definition of done is. And of course, ops people also have a definition of done, what they think it should be. If it is that the software is stable, it's being tested, it runs properly without any problems. If I need to back up or restore your application, it can be done forwards and backwards compatible. In other words, if I upgrade something and something goes really, really bad, I can roll back and change my environment or change your environment because it's actually your application. But when your application starts affecting the whole environment, I'm the one that gets the calls at 2:56 a.m. in the morning, not you. Highly available, again, not only one application can bring down your whole system. If you have one web server or one database, that database has to be highly available, and your load balancers and your caching mechanisms and everything else from your development standpoint, everything has to be highly available. And of course, you have to know how your software performs. In other words, I want to know what is good and what is bad. How do I know when I need to send an alert to somebody or when I need to tell somebody you need to scale up your application because something is not working properly? Is it because your disk is constrained or your network is constrained or your CPU is constrained or so on and so forth? Project handover. That's usually what happens today. Your developers give you your application and there you go, it's yours, enjoy. Essentially, in a DevOps group, you should never ever do project handover because the whole idea is that you as a group of developers and ops people together continue to support, and you don't hand it over to somebody to continue supporting your application. We are oil and water. Yes, we don't really mix. Sometimes we do mix, sometimes it does work. So unfortunately, this picture specifically is oil and water and we don't mix, correct. But there are ways that we can talk to each other, understand what the other one thinks, understand what the other one cares about, understand what the other one doesn't care about whatsoever, and see how you can bridge those gaps between the two of you. A typical, what does it look like, for example, when a developer is working on something and not necessarily sees the big picture of what happens underneath or what's on top, or what happens when an operations guy says, I'm taking down the network, what did it do to my application? Not everybody sees the full picture. A developer, as I think, develops an application and develops a software, but they're not necessarily aware of what consequences or what catastrophic occurrences can happen by the change that they make or they do, or they use. For example, if they have an application which uses 100% CPU and 100% memory and 100% disk on every single server they use, then, and they didn't think of it because somebody wrote a script to do a database dump backward and in and out just because they wanted to test something, then of course there are problems. So always look at the big picture. As a developer and as an ops guy, try also to listen to the other person as well to see exactly what their problems are and what they're trying to achieve. I'm almost finished. 2 more slides. As I said, that's me on Twitter. Please feel free to contact me, ask me anything you would like. If I can, I'll be more than happy to help you out. My blog and all the GIFs were from the site called DevOps Reactions, which is actually very funny. I enjoy them immensely every single time. Of people which upload small GIFs or with some kind of thing like that to explain how people feel. The last slide which I have for today is something which I think and I really, really live by. Somebody by the name of John Vincent. I'm sure some of you know who he is. Read it for 1 second, and this is what I think DevOps is. Everybody has to understand that they are not living in a vacuum. There's not only developers, there's not only operations people who don't care about the developers. You're working together as a group, or should be working together as a group, in order to help your company or your business perform better, to work better, to make more money. And as I say, you need to understand infrastructure. Developers need to understand infrastructure. Ops people need to understand code. People need to work, I left the word out on purpose. People need to work with each other and not just occupy space to each other, next to each other. Work together, and I'm sure if that kind of a culture can happen, it will be the best thing there is for anybody's business. Thank you very much.